We're going to kick it off with Alyssa. Alyssa, you want to dive right in?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Hi, everyone. Already getting support in the chat. I love it. Okay, so I think everyone can hear me all right. I'm preparing to screen share right now. Also, just a heads up for everyone, I plan on like linking us up in buddies, and we'll be using the chat feature. We will be talking to one another. So just to give you all an estimation and so I don't surprise you, about a third of the way through, I'm going to ask you to use your chat feature. And about half of the way through, we'll be engaging with one another as well, and Steve will help me out on that. So just preparing everyone for that. So I'm going to go ahead and drop a link in the chat in terms of like what I'm about to share, and I think that I have screen sharing capabilities. Perfect. So let's talk study groups. Let's see, and my chat's a little wonky right now. It's not letting me drop the link. I know that Steve has the link in there, so maybe I'll try again in a few moments
The
here.
link is there, Alyssa. You're good. It's showing up.
Oh, perfect. So my chat's broken, so if anybody tries to chat me specifically during this presentation, I probably won't be able to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share right now. Study groups, why study groups? It shows up a lot, and something that I've really noticed along the months that I've been studying is that it seems to be a plumb line, or another word for that seems to be like a consistent thing that is showing up among people that are scoring high. This happened specifically. I was on the call recently with one of Steve's students who is awesome, and she has just recently scored a 170 on her first try. I had the pleasure of being on a phone call with her a few months ago, and something that she specifically talked about was her study group. What I hope you get by the end of this, is that you get some more ideas of what exactly to do in your study groups, not because you don't know what to do, but because these specific tips that I'm about to share with you is what has helped me create consistency. And with that consistency, I've been able, and my study partners, according to their statements and their emails and, all the things that we've shared together, I would almost guarantee that if you start a study group and you stick with it consistently, within a month to 2 months, you're going to feel some sort of awareness or progress. So hopefully you get that and whatnot. So these are some of the problems that I have been hearing consistently. Like, how do you fit in more hours? How do you track progress? And then this is, you could put anything in, whether you're working part-time, working full-time, you're a parent, you have finals, or you're studying full-time. There's a lot of different variations of where anybody can be at in the LSAT process. But the really good news is that when you have a study group consistently, you can either find people that are sharing this exact load with you, or people that are in completely different areas, but they still have something to offer you. Other times I hear like people say like I work best alone, or maybe if you're like me, for the longest time I was scared to start a study group or to engage in study groups because I was so nervous that I would be inconsistent, or like sometimes I'm having a bad week. I was like, I can't commit myself. All right, like just like out of sheer like maybe like embarrassment or just like fear that like I couldn't commit myself to a small group of people. So I was at the earlier stages of my studying really hanging back in some of those like larger groups, like belonging to those like really big Facebook messages like, hey, join this group if you plan on taking the test in name this month. And it just has a lot of people in it. I've belonged to things like that because I was afraid. And then the last section, like, how do I get faster? So all of these questions from my personal experience and all of these sorts of like issues that have arrived, these have all been alleviated when I implemented the next things that I'm about to share with you. And obviously, like, getting faster is a process. So I wouldn't say, I kind of retract my statement like as a good like law student would, of like not alleviating, but like it definitely answers these questions and definitely has helped me get farther. So I'm going to go ahead and jump on to the next slide. Thanks, Steve. So benefits of a consistent study group. So exposure to new materials that you don't have time to get to. Like Steve has said it, we've all said it. There are a lot of videos in Steve's course. Maybe you need to watch them all because that's working for you. But 9 times out of 10, like there's one video in that course that you haven't gotten to, even if you plan on it. So if you find someone that you can actually share information with, they could say, oh, you know what? I just watched Steve's video on necessary assumption today, and it just sparked this. So maybe you don't have time to get to it. Maybe there's other materials, right? Like the point is that talking to someone in real time can exchange information. And that brings me to the second point right here. It's almost even cooler. What about the reinforcement of ideas that you've already been exposed to? Like, we could all raise our hand and be like, yeah, I read that portion of Power Score Logic Games Bible, but that was 2 weeks ago, and I'm already moving on to logical reasoning. What if somebody is 2 weeks behind you in the process and they're like, oh yeah, so I read chapter 5 today and it reminded me of this? Chances are they're going to bring something up that you're like, oh, holy cow, that is something that I read and I totally digested, but thank you so much for bringing it up again. So, you can share, cut and paste, that exposure to different things. Like there's so much, like Steve has a podcast. There's the Dean Z Michigan Law YouTube channel. Like there's so much out there that having a buddy just helps you out no matter what. Third point of the benefits of a consistent study group is just flat out higher engagement with the material. And what I mean by this is just talking, having to talk something out. To the point of like, if you are more introverted or if you do work better with textbook material, that's great. Instead of meeting with a study group 3 times a week, why don't you just meet with a study group once a week? Once a week, 1 hour. When you are forced, as Steve has said, and I'm so grateful for the TA program to talk things out. It doesn't really matter what you're talking about. You're going to get a better grip on it. So you're kind of building in this next level up of studying for yourself, taking yourself to the next level. And then the last point that I'm going to make, definitely not the last benefit of a study group. There's so many, is that people can pick you up when something goes unexpectedly, or when new barriers happen, and that's probably going to happen. Like it's not a secret that, Elena's saying amen. It's not a secret, everybody has that. Oh my gosh, I just bombed that practice test, or I just did a game and I just totally flat out like blanked. It could be something else that related, or it could not be. It could be like, you know what? My girlfriend just got in a car accident and she's totally okay, but I'm feeling uneasy. Sometimes just having those people to talk things out with is actually a huge benefit in and itself. And at the end of this, I actually left a few links on just the benefits of community care. We're all, if you're in this course, if you're in this video right now session, we are in this special pressure cooker of a moment where we are the only ones that are doing what we're doing right now. And it sounds so silly, but we can leverage each other and leverage that communal care. That I'm sure that we all have somebody in our social support group that we can turn to and say, oh, I had a really bad day. But there's nothing like saying, oh, I had a really bad day, and someone saying, oh, me too. Did you do that problem? It just really goes a long way. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. I know that the last slide here said the benefits, but for me, there's a difference of the benefits that you get, and also like, no, seriously, why it's really important that maybe you should consider like a really tight knit study group. Holds you accountable. And I know that this like word accountability, it can almost be like annoying. Like, of course, we're all detail oriented people. But oh, nice. I don't know if it's Carolina or Carolina, or not either of those, but you're welcome in the chat.
It's Carolina. Thank you.
Carolina. Oh, cool. Nice to hear from you. So Carolina just said, putting into that perspective of why groups are good and not scary, I think is great. Did you have any more you wanted to share, Carolina, or?
No, like I agree with you. It's really hard to have a bad day and then deal with studying on top of everything, and then not really have that support because as you know, not everyone knows how intense it is to study for the LSAT and have a job and have family and everything else going on at the same time. And it can be a bit overwhelming, and not everyone's going to understand where we're coming from.
Yes. Wow. That was so powerful, Carolina. Exactly. And yeah, totally. I completely agree. Something that I find, kind of bringing it back to like why it's important here is that, and something that I didn't really notice until I was in Steve's courses and finding study groups from Steve's courses, is that with other people, or maybe like on the Facebook page, like they want study groups, but they're tended to be like, okay, let's do it like a start stop. But anybody who is in this course and anybody who showed up tonight, you can already bet your bottom dollar that they've already done the same steps that you have to get this far in their studying process. And therefore, these are probably really great people to leverage because they're already picking up what you are picking up, if that makes sense. So it's important because it holds you accountable, not in a scary way, but because you want that, right? Progress needs accountability. Like you need to be able to show up at least once a week for something that's important to you. And that kind of brings around like another point, and in forming study groups, you're prioritizing something that is important to you. And also, I did say most likely need study groups in law school, even though I'm pretty close to sure like you're going to need study groups in law school from what I've understood thus far, but you'll see my qualifier in there. You'll most likely need them. Something. So getting used to talking with your peers is a skill set that I have a feeling I'm going to need. So, and putting myself in those uncomfortable situations and, trying to get interested in the work and trying to put aside any of my own thoughts. So I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. Thank you, Steve. Okay, so it does say what you'll need to create a successful group. Maybe you have a completely different idea of what success means to you. These are just my ideas of what has worked for me. And here we go. So a really small group. You'll notice that it says 2 to 4 people. I have played around with this number, and after many months, I have found that this seems to be the sweet spot. I have overheard that people that are more introverted, or maybe they're not so keen on placing themselves in larger groups, 2 people is just fine. Work with one other person. Start to create that relationship and that bond and showing up for one another. This can be incredibly beneficial. 4 people, I would say, is the max, because in a study group, you would like to aim to actually not be that fly on the wall. That's the whole point, that you're trying to show up for this study group. So any more than 4 people and voices can get lost, or maybe there's not enough time. There's only so many minutes in an hour. If there's 4 people, you're talking for 15 minutes, roughly, you could say. And so those 4 people tends to actually be the max if you really want to get a lot of material done. 3 people works great. Just a FYI. Let's see. I've got Ariel said, don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. Totally. I know that like me, I have a study group with Virginia and Sochita and I, like the 3 of us, we work really well together. And I also work with other people too. So what you'll also need is email addresses, phone numbers, and the truth about your schedule. So I put email and phone here because we want to try to avoid that, I sent them an email, but I didn't hear back from them. Like, get in there. Okay, you need to communicate with one another. And the reason I put the truth about your schedule is you could be a parent, you could be working, you could be doing a lot of things. In my experience, when I tell the truth, that tends to work out really well for me. My study buddies all can say here, I'll just say, hey, I'm burnt out. I'm not coming tonight. Or I'm working or anything like that. But you can find someone that matches your schedule. I have a really strong feeling you can find someone that matches your schedule as long as you're truthful about it up front. Consistency. I kind of spoke to this point already about like showing up for something that you really care about. But what this is also really special and I hold dear to my heart about consistency is that you want to create that bond where you start to develop a rapport. Okay, this person says this, maybe they meant this, or what do you think about this? You're aiming to create that comfort level with each other and with the test, because you're only going to be able to flourish more when you create that comfort level. But another kind of secret hidden weapon of consistency that I'm personally obsessed with is how it enables each person in the study group to celebrate wins. Like you're those really small moments where you can say, hey, remember last week when I actually was struggling with like my strategy on a principal question, and you know, when you share that with me, I just worked on it for a week straight and now I nailed all of those. You know, I think that we underestimate the power of actually being to talk to someone face on and say, hey, I just got over this last hill. A lot of times we think that study groups are a place to bring our problems, but every single time we acknowledge the hill that we've just climbed, that's also really equally important to progress just in general. And I put access to PTs here, PT 50s for drilling. This point is up for discussion, okay, just like all of the points I'm bringing up. But the reason that I've said here PT 50s for drilling is that it alleviates the awkwardness of varying schedules, okay? Some person is, no matter what, you know, PT schedules are very personal. And you could say, let's do every PT once a week together. Somebody's going to have a bad week. Somebody's going to want to slow down. It's not as realistic. And the kind of the point of all the tips I'm trying to share with you right now is how to create those buffer zones so that you do keep showing up consistently, so that the study group works for you and you don't feel like you are attached to this train that's moving without you. You don't feel like you're moving faster than somebody else in your study group. So the reason that I say 50s are a great place to start, because in Steve's courses, he starts doing time sections, you know, in games, I think around like 73 and 74, you know, 60s, a lot of people still are using those for PTs. The 50s are a great place to mine. Just mine. Just rip open the 50s in your study groups. And it kind of makes me think like, there are some areas that like you have to walk alone, young Jedi. And it's like, you know, it gets tempting to be like, let's do all this together. Or I just did a practice test 75 and I want to talk about this problem with my study group. In my earlier days, I was so excited. I was doing any question that anyone brought to me. And then the next week I'd be like taking my practice test. I was like, oh, crud, I just went over this in depth in my study group. And so I say 50s because it alleviates that sort of like fluctuation of where everyone's at, and you can move faster than your group, you can move slower than your group, and everyone can still mine the 50s for all that they're worth. That's just one tip I have, but do that with that what you will. And the last thing you need is the willingness to be vulnerable. And I thought about putting this point down 3 times, and then I was like, come on, Alyssa, like they're all very smart people, they don't need it more than once. But I really believe in this point, and thanks, Ariel. She likes my sense of humor, but I really believe in this point of the willingness to be vulnerable. And what I do even before I started presenting tonight, I just thought I'm just practicing. Everything is just a practice. I'm just going to practice using my voice, and I'm just going to practice saying exactly what I mean. And it's going to bring me to a further place. So be vulnerable with your group, and I think that it'll pay off. Matthew says, if you can be honest and vulnerable with others, then you can be honest with yourself, which is a fantastic point for review and progress, Matthew. Absolutely. We all just want to get better, so use it for all it's worth. So something that I'm going to work on right now is I'm going to just talk about two different ways that you can actually approach the study group once you actually get there. And with these 2 ideas in mind, I'm going to talk about the first one in the next slide. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, you go ahead, Steve. Thank you so much. The only reason I'm bringing this up is because you want the study group to work for you. So the more that you can align everybody's expectations in the group, of what it's about to look like, the better. You want to mesh well with others. So I just came up with this idea of open sessions versus focus sessions. I just made this up. It's just based off of my experiences. So with an open session, you set a time to meet. Friday night, let's go. Friday night, 7:00. Okay, you work on what the group needs as you go. Everybody shows up at 4. Hey, what are you having struggles with? Hey, I'm working on weakening questions. Great, let's bring up weakening questions. One person sets a timer. You all look at the same question. Another person is screen sharing. When the timer's up, you type your answer in the chat, and you spend time discussing the stimulus, the question stem, and each answer choice. This can take in one group, if you have 3 people, you can take an hour for 3 to 4 questions talking about it. So what I've discovered who this is for is like, maybe you're just getting familiar with the material. Maybe you're finding you're so exhausted that you can't guarantee yourself time with material. So this would be a great option. You meet up and you get more exposure. Somebody's like, let's do weekend questions. And you might say, haven't even started on weekend questions. Great. That's a perfect place to start. Let's get in there. Let's get some exposure. I would say consider this option when starting out with a new group, especially so you can get to know each other. And so that you can actually, maybe you haven't gotten used to that review process of when you're saying, why is every answer that's wrong, wrong? And why is every answer that's right, right? This is a perfect place to start getting used to that sort of way of working. So you can go ahead and click on the next slide, Steve. Thanks so much. So all you need for an open session is one person to set the timer, maybe the same person, a different person to screen share. Make sure you rotate those positions because it kind of does mess with your focus a little bit. And the benefit of this is that you're probably more likely to show up. Like, you can show up to this tired. You can show up to this with nothing prepared. Obviously you want to be studying throughout the week. You don't want to rely heavily on your group study, but this is a really great way to start out those relationships if you're newer. This bottom part, engagement, being able to trade off like actually talking about answer choices and really digging deep has been really vital to, I know, my own personal success, and I really encourage it for everyone else. So I think that now we are actually going to stimulate a open study session. So I am going to drop a link in the chat, and we are all going to do question number 8 off of this pre-approved logical reasoning examples. So something that I like to do, especially because we're moving from like presentation mode to we're just trying question. If you want, you can take a deep breath with me. I like to take a deep breath. So I'm going to take one right now, find my feet on the floor, deep breath in and exhale. So what I'm actually going to do for this purpose only is I'm going to partner you all up. So it looks like there is about 17 people that will have partners. So what you'll do right now is I'm going to shout out the partners. I'm going to give you all about 30 seconds to type to each other privately in the chat. Okay, say hi. And you're going to use that plug back and forth to discuss the answer to the next question that I'll put up in just a moment. But I'm just going to partner you up for a minute. Total, I'm hoping this will take about 7 minutes, just to give everyone an out so you're not panicking like I'm stuck with this partner. Roughly about 7 minutes. Hang with me. So Ariel, you're going to be with Ayaka. I'm just reading down my participants list. Okay. And Billy, you're going to be with Carolina. Billy and Carolina, go ahead and type to each other in the chat. Davinder and Elena, go ahead and type to each other in the chat. Both the Gabbies, so Gabby, find the other Gabby in the chat. We have Gabby C and Gabby. Hiart and Madison, go ahead and type to each other in the chat. Hi. Marcos and Matthew. I just combined your first name and last name. And then our last, Pam and Samantha Grant, go ahead and type to each other in the chat. And the last two, Sochita and Virginia. That's so funny. Sochita and Virginia. I know you study together. Okay, so Everyone say hello. I'm going to give you just a few more moments. We have Ariel with Ayaka, Billy with Carolina, Davinder with Elena, Gabby and Gabby together, Hiart and Madison together, Marcos and Matthew together, Pam and Samantha together, Sochita and Virginia. So now that you've typed to each other in the chat, I'm going to drop the link right here. And if you click on that link, we are going to look at question number 8. It would be helpful if I put question number 8. Okay, so I'm actually going to do everyone a solid, and I'm going to set the timer as though we're all doing an open session together. So kind of think of me as like the third study partner between the two of you, if you will. So there's 3 of us. I'm ready to set the timer. I'm going to set the timer for 3.5 minutes. And when the 3.5 minutes is up, go ahead and type privately in the chat your answer to the partner that I've just suggested. So let's see. I think I can see some of you. Just throw a thumbs up in the video if you hear me, you're comfortable, you know what's about to happen. All right, everyone has the link up. Thank you, Matthew. I see a thumbs up. I see thumbs up from a few people. Okay, great. Thumbs up from Steve. I love it. Okay, doing question number 8. I'm going to mute myself. I'm setting a timer for 3.5 minutes. In 3, 2, 1, go ahead and read the question, and I'll come back on. You'll answer in the chat. Go. Okay, everyone, it's been a few minutes. I'm going to go ahead and invite all of you to make sure that your DM chat is set up to the partner that I've already assigned you to. Go ahead and type to one another the answer choice that you've selected. If tonight's your first night, type tonight's my first night. Just again, be willing to be vulnerable. Just tell the truth. Say, actually, I didn't read it. Just whatever comes to mind, type in the answer and then just tell the truth. So I'm going to give you a few moments to do that. If you come up with the same answer, share with one another. I'm going to give you about a minute or so. Share with one another why you chose that answer. And respond to one another. Say why you chose it. I'm going to give you a minute. And the really exciting thing is, if you say, I actually have no idea if this is correct or I got this wrong, you may be giving somebody else the opportunity to teach, which can only benefit them. So it does benefit you if you're at an I don't know point. I really welcome you to say that, because then the other person gets this option, right, to sort of step up. So I'll give you just a few more moments. Okay, great. We'll just stop there for right now. I've sort of simulated being like the third study buddy-ish kind of talking. Hopefully that gives you an idea of like what you could do. Of course, you wouldn't have to use the chat feature. Anybody have any insight? Like, how did that go for them? Feel free to unmute yourself. Just shout at me or type in the chat. Pretty good, pretty solid, makes sense. Nice. Okay, so Steve, we're going to come back on slide number 10 is going to be the next slide, and then we'll just go ahead and screen share. So that's just sort of a way that you can work with an open study session. Again, I highly recommend. So moving forward, focused session. So this is a little bit different. You create a schedule with assignments and you stick to it. What you need for this is a little foresight to come a little prepared to your meetings, and organization. I really have a big emphasis on organization. The more organized you are with your notes for your study group, it's very, very important that you do this, because then you'll be able to keep doing it. If you're not organized, you're most likely going to say, I can't meet it, I can't make this meeting, and you might get it all shuffled up. Full note, I have 2 separate review sheets, one for when I'm in my group settings and I'm discussing different pieces of work there, and then I have my own personal review sheet. That works for me best, because I am talking about a lot of different stuff versus, and there is a lot of different things going on there. So I have a completely separate sheet for my study groups, which works out really well. I would say who this is for is the person who's really comfortable with the motivation. Like, you're no longer asking yourself, like, how do I fit in the time to study? And you're no longer asking yourself or maybe getting like those earlier starts, you're feeling extremely comfortable with the theory basics, and you're looking to streamline your process by comparing it to another person's. So I think that this is really important for someone who is feeling strong enough and secure enough that they can compare their process with somebody else's and understand that maybe you don't take on that person's process, or maybe you do, but you're not looking to sort of get that exposure. You're looking to, again, level up. So an example of how to do this would be to look at every game section in the 50s. And that sounds crazy when I read it like that, but you could say, hey, we're going to meet twice a week. The first day, everyone's going to come. I don't know if any of you were in the TA class where the TAs, we all brought our own diagrams. That's a great way to start. You're going to say, hey, on Tuesday, we're going to do the first game in PT 50. We're all going to have our diagrams, and we're all going to get ready to screen share our diagram, walk each other through exactly how we're going to do it. That would probably take an hour if you did that, and with 4 people. And then on Thursday, you're going to do the second game. And the next Tuesday, you're going to do the third game. And then the next Thursday, you're going to do the 4th game. This is coming in clutch. Like, talk about tightening up your process, tightening up your strategy, tightening up your accountability skills, and really getting that zoom in on how somebody else is doing it. To me, just seems invaluable. Like, holding up a mirror to your own process and getting to see somebody else's is incredible. And there's not as much room in those meetings for some of those like earlier, like motivational or like needing to get exposure. So this is someone who's like, I've got it. I want to level up. This lends itself. I forgot to mention that the open sessions where you come unprepared and you're working together as a group, that lends itself best to logical reasoning. Totally works for logic games. I would say for logic games, if you are going to work together, most likely not going to get the whole game done. Depends on how fast you work. This one, the focus session where you come prepared, it works really well for reading comp. If you're looking to level up in your reading comp, come prepared with what was the main point, what was the author's tone, and look at that with one another. I know that I've been doing that in my study groups, and my reading comp score jumped. I want to say it jumped like 8 points consistently higher. I hope I would say. So this is for someone who's really looking to streamline their process. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide. So now we're going to try something a little bit different. The exact same question that we just worked on. We just worked on question number 8. I'm going to drop the link in the chat once more, but this time we've already done the question. We've already talked about it. And this, instead of maybe in that chat when you answered like, this is why the correct answer is correct, when we break out into these focus sessions, we're no longer going to talk about why it's correct and why it's incorrect. Now I really encourage everyone to share how they solve it. What is your process? Somebody is probably a question stem first kind of person. And I really highly encourage you to walk through, this is what I do, this is how I do it. Really similar to Gabby's presentation. I believe it was last week. Fire presentation, Gabby, by the way. So instead of just talking about why the answer is right, we're going to all share like, how do we solve something, or what's a barrier that happened to us? Something like that. So if Steve, if you don't mind, I think Steve is about to just totally parachute us into breakout rooms. You all should have a click to accept. And Steve, before I leave you, because I think I'm being cannoned out into a group as well. Before I leave you, I would give us about 4 minutes or something. And then if we're in groups of 4, everybody has about a minute to talk. And then Steve, we'll all get a notification from Steve that'll say we have about a minute to wrap it up. And then Steve will click a godlike button and we'll all get pulled back here together. That's the plan. So go for it. I just had a ton of fun. I hope that everybody else did too. I know sometimes it can be, Yeah, not stressful, but it can be uncomfortable to be in a room. It like kind of takes me back to being in grade school, like when they're like, "Okay, everyone has a buddy now," and it's sort of like panic, panic, panic. I have to talk now. I know that I've had that feeling. So I hope that everyone joins us back, but okay, so we have quite a few people plugging in now. Hi, welcome. Welcome back, everyone. How did that go? Now that we've sort of warmed up, hopefully everyone's had like some wiggle juice in their vocal cords. Anyone want to share how that went for them? Matthew, pretty good. Normal, not normal, weird. Could you see yourself doing that? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, Pam says it was great. Something that I really, Madison says it was good. Elena said, loved getting to know everyone. I know I did too. I would have never had the chance to speak with like the people that were in my room. I'm like, wow, it's so nice to meet you. And something that I found is that Ariel and I were kind of talking about this today. Like every time Samantha Grant says it was great, time went too fast. Good. I want you to be hungry to create those study groups. So always leave them wanting more. So I know it's really fantastic because anytime like you speak from truth or like you speak from like this is what's happening to me, chances are it's happening to someone else. So that was really fantastic. And I remember like one time Steve actually said this to me. He probably doesn't even remember because it was months ago. But he said, it's like it's really interesting. A lot of people taking the LSAT, it can be an incredibly strenuous process, and a lot of people feel like they're doing alone. And he was like, it's kind of funny because I can't speak for him, but he had shared with me. He's like, it's kind of funny because like he has access. So he's like seeing every like hundreds of people, maybe even thousands if I want to get really into it. So I'm almost done. I won't torture you. We're not going in breakout groups again, even though it looks like a lot of you guys have fun. So Steve, we're just going back to the slideshow. We're going to be on slide number 13 when we come back. So these are just some tips that I'm leaving with. So a really easy way to just meet after Steve's class. You're already sitting in front of your computer or your phone. So it's a really easy way to make it consistent. You don't have to worry about scheduling on Friday. Most of us are sitting here, so we can just meet right after. Another one is continue with the material from class. I'm ripping this idea directly from Steve. He brought this up. So if he's working on conditional chains, logic games, just stay 30 minutes after with your study group and try to do another in-out game. Because that's most of the time where conditional rules are going to show up. So do 3 or 4 more questions together, like run with the idea that Steve has just directly handed to us. Just rip him off. No, I'm just kidding. Not like that. So copy him, right? Like this is actually what has made my study group so successful. I say study groups because I have 2 of them, because I meet with like 2 to 3 people in each group because I really believe in that number. That's why you'll hear me saying groups. Also with the schedule, I really can't meet more than with 2 groups. It is a lot. So find 1 group or 2 groups. But just copy what he's doing. Like he's always giving Gabby's so much support in the chat. Thank you. So Steve gives us a lot of information, and it can be overwhelming if you're trying to figure out what works best for you. So something that I mentioned at the very tail end of this exact slide is try to stick with the system for at least 2 weeks. You're never going to feel comfortable doing something once. Unless you're really cool, then maybe. But most of the time, you gotta kind of keep showing up for yourself. So if you have a new group, try meeting with them for 2 weeks. Even if you're unsure after the first one, like, oh my gosh, I don't know if our personality is gonna match. Like, just try for 2 weeks. If you want to stick to those closed sessions, and you're like, okay, we are going to do. I'm going to give away a direct, like this is exactly what I do with my study groups. We're going to do the first reading passage in PT 50, and we're all going to come together and talk about it. Then we're going to do the second reading passage the next day. Then we're going to do the third reading passage. Try to stick with the system for at least 2 weeks and then tweak it slightly. Don't ditch something after the first one. Ambiguity is the enemy of progress. I didn't make that quote up. I also didn't quote anyone because it's not a direct quote. So take that with what you will. Hopes nobody sues me. But be as clear as possible with your goals, process, and barriers as they come up. I think this is just like general good practice for handling what we're all, trying to handle. It's like, hey, this came up for me. Just tell the truth. Don't disappear from your study group and then in a few weeks be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, that's okay if that happens, but just continue that communication. It's going to only strengthen your communication skill set when you're 1L, and you're definitely going to need that communication skill set anyway. So just start practicing. And the next slide, please. So I'm not going to go over this. These are just questions that I think are really important, that when you are starting a study group, you don't even have to meet for these. Just send each other emails at first. Be pen pals. But you do want to know when somebody's test date is. You do want to know what their goal score is to see if you're a good fit. I've joked before that finding a good study group is like dating, but now I'm starting to not joke about it. I think it's actually true. Like, you do have to find some common middle ground, because the whole point, again, is that you want to make it work for you. You want to make it a place that you can show up to. So the more honest you are and the more information you give, you're creating a bed that is really comfortable for you to lay in. And the next slide, if you will. Keep it really consistent. I once belonged to a study group that we were like, okay, we're going to meet at this time on Thursdays and then this time on Saturdays. And it just didn't work. It fizzled out. So just driving that nailing force, like, keep it super consistent. Meet once a week. Every Tuesday, Thursday at 9 Eastern is a really simple way to keep it. And that's going to be all I have for you today. The last slide, if you just want to click on that, Steve, that's just some links and information about how powerful communal care can be. It's an idea that has existed for a while in nonprofit organizations, and it's starting, I think, to trickle more into pop culture, like talking about communal care. And there's a lot of, I'm not an expert in this, but I really believe in it. There is a lot of talk about like self-care and making sure that you're taking care of yourself, especially in a strenuous activity like the LSAT. And the LSAT is, like, if you remember when I was like young Jedi, like, some things you have to do alone, but there is a lot of power in communal care. And the people that are in Steve's courses are like ripe for picking, because they've already made the same step that you have in trying to better themselves. Like, they're already in the same course as you. So kind of like, like, instead of like just squeezing a lemon, like some people are like, that's not how you squeeze a lemon. You need to get all the juice out of it. So use all the juice in Steve's courses and use everyone that you can, because the communal care isn't just a scary thing or like something that'll probably fizzle out. It can actually turn into something really powerful. Anybody have any questions or any comments or anything like that? And if not, I'll give you all a nice, solid 5-minute water break for Ariel's, I'm sure, going to be incredible presentation. Thanks for the support, everyone. I definitely encourage you, if you like to studied with, reach out to them right now. Share emails. Or if you've ever studied in a really big group, just ask yourself, like, did anyone in that group like stand out to me? And reach out to them, DM them, slide in their DMs, start to build something for yourself, and start to get away from those really big groups, which can be really good for motivation, but get a little bit deeper, get a little bit more personal. Nice, lots of positive feedback in the chat. Thanks, everyone. Cool. Steve, you can take it away.
Yeah, sure. I'll save my comments for just a moment because I see Ariel raised your hand.
Yes. So first of all, this presentation was epic. Alyssa, I loved everything about it, especially the last slide about community care and self-care. I think that's incredibly important. But I did want to ask, how did you and or Steve like do the voodoo that you guys did to like get us into like the separate rooms? Is that something that we can do on our own, or do you have to be a host and do that? Like, how does one do that?
Steve.
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I could comment on that. Basically, breakout rooms are a feature in Zoom specifically, and I think only the meeting host has the power to set up the breakout rooms, to put people into breakout rooms and to bring them back out. If any of the TAs or anyone doing a presentation in the future wants to be able to do breakout rooms during one of these classes, I can make you a co-host for the session. And so you would be able to establish the breakout rooms yourself. As for one of the meetings in which I'm not present and it's my Zoom account, I don't think it's technically possible for others to set them up. But in a way, I think, let me ask you, Ariel, why did you ask? What are your thoughts?
So I really like that feature, especially if, for example, if there's a large study group, maybe 15 people, it's like that could still be broken up into smaller groups, and then the larger group can come back later. So I kind of like that for that reason, just in case maybe a larger group of people have the same availability, instead of just kind of sectioning yourselves off and being like, well, Alyssa has with 2 different groups, maybe she can just have one massive group and kind of separate themselves like during the same time. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah, Alyssa, you want to share thoughts on that?
I think it's brilliant. It's such a great idea, Ariel. It's like, this is why study groups rock, because somebody else can bring forth an idea that just makes so much sense. And I think that you're really onto something there. Yeah, I'm interested. I don't actually know if it's like if I'm on my own account. I've never seen it. I don't know if it's actually also just for like professional level Zoom accounts or something like that, but definitely something to play around with.
Yeah, I think you have to have a professional account to be able to have like no time limit on meetings of more than 2 people to be able to do the breakout rooms as well. That's my expectation. I see Sochita raised her hand. I don't know if she has a comment around this or something else.
Yeah, I actually do. Well, I have a Zoom account and I don't have a professional Zoom account, but I do have that feature because I've been using it for months now with the study group, Alyssa and Virginia, that we have. I have the breakout room feature. So from the beginning, you won't have it, but I think if you using it 3-4 hours a day, I don't know, we've been using a lot and it's been a few months and I have that feature now. So just for future reference, if you know.
Yeah, I mean, give it a shot. It sounds interesting to me. I think, Alyssa, I just want to share some comments with the couple minutes we have left. I think this was a fantastic presentation for so many reasons, including the specifics around how to set it up. I really enjoyed your comments around like what the random ad hoc study groups can be like from somebody's Facebook post. I think that people want the group, they mean well when they make the post, but then it's hard to get the consistency and the routine around it, in part because there isn't that shared bond around something else and competing applications can get in the way. So I would really encourage folks to, since you're in this course, since you're showing up live, assuming you're watching this live right now, that you can meet with others who already they're available on a Wednesday night for a live class about study groups. They probably care about study groups. If they're attending one of the other live classes, like the Tuesday night classes, well, there is an organized study group I've set up every single week. I send out a separate notification about it just because I expect that right after class, you probably can connect on something else, another live session if you want to. And so I've set it up as a default. My hope is that, let's say you go Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, you meet others who are in the course available at that time, showing up live. You meet someone you connect with, you DM them directly. You can set up a separate meeting, recurring time. Like if you both happen to be available Fridays at 3 p.m., fantastic. Go do that. Find a mutually convenient time, but you're with people who have a shared common interest and they're also showing up live. They're working through the same material. So definitely encourage folks, take advantage of this, run with it. Alyssa, I love that you had folks try out different connections. You had folks DM, you had folks do the breakout rooms. Connect with people who you just met now. DM them your email address, DM them your phone number. Find a mutually convenient time and make it happen. But as you can testify, Alyssa, like you've benefited so much from study groups that you set up 2 of them. So there's a lot to be gained there. And I find that accountability, that check-in can do a lot. So let's all take a moment just to unmute ourselves and give Alyssa a big round of applause for putting this together for everyone. So please unmute yourself and give a round of applause. Thanks so much, Alyssa.
Can I just add something? That this has probably been better than some of the work meetings I've attended. So you did a really great job.
Awesome. Sweet. Again, thanks so much, Alyssa. If nothing else on this, let's switch gears. We're at the top of the hour.